Everyone knows by now that if you play Hotel California by the Eagles on a YouTube video, it'll get a copyright strike right away. In fact, it might even just get deleted, who knows. But the chord progression for this song, Hotel California, is so perfect to use as a test bed for target notes. I'm just going to take my chances. Looks like we're still here. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. Today, we will use the chord progression for Hotel California to explore the concept of target notes. Now, if you don't know anything about target notes, don't worry about that. I'll explain it in a second. But I am assuming that you've heard Hotel California. And whether or not you agree with it, the solo section for that song is iconic, and it's a perfect example of a composed solo. A composed solo is something that's written ahead of time and not necessarily improvised there on the spot. Hotel California was written by Don Felder and Glenn Frey of the Eagles, but the solo section and the guitar solos themselves were performed by Don Felder and Joe Walsh, who had recently joined the band. Now, this solo is totally classic, and it relies heavily on the idea of target notes. Both Felder and Walsh utilize this methodology throughout the solo. Self-educating guitar players can get tripped up by new concepts. Is this important for me to know right now? In my goals as a guitar player, if I even know what they are, is this important to me? Will this make me a better player? I help guitar players through this muck all the time, and I do it in my online guitar academy called The Studio. The Studio is an online community platform that also features educational content. There are dozens and dozens of individual curated lessons. I teach live deep dive courses, I hold live QA events, I even hold live guided practice sessions. Guitar players in The Studio can post their progress on just about anything and get direct feedback from me. Now, I know that the idea of an online guitar community might not be for everyone. So I'm offering a 7-day free trial in the studio. Just get in there and see what you think. In 7 days, you can certainly get through a few lessons, check out the content, see what you think, maybe even make some friends. If it doesn't look like it's for you, I totally understand that. But if you do decide to stick around, I look forward to working with you. The idea of target notes is simply that we're going to land on something that's intentional, right? We're going to choose a note to end a phrase on, for example. Now, any note that's worthy of targeting has to have some sort of satisfying relationship with the chords that you're playing over. Now, in general, chord tones, the notes inside the chord, make up the first best choice as target notes. Now, while you don't need to know a lot of theory, the first stop on this journey is the root or the third of the chord. The third is the note that tells us whether a chord is major or minor. But for many of us, theory isn't our focus, right? So we can use visual acuity to see what chords are being played, right? To actually have a visual map and just start using those to target. And then we can bring our ear along and see what the result is. Are these notes, do they sound good? Do we like them? Do we prefer some notes over other ones? These kinds of choices and decisions start with target notes. Now, this was in no way easy for me when I first started it. In fact, just trying to think while I was playing of anything was not easy, right? But it's not impossible. And if you put the effort in, you get really good results really quickly. Let's zoom in and use this excellent chord progression to dive into the idea of target notes. All right, step one is to make sure we understand the chord progression. Hotel California starts out with a B minor, goes to F sharp 7, A is the next chord, moving to E, then it goes to G, then to D, now E minor, and back to that F sharp 7. That's basically the whole chord progression, right? We need this information so that when we're picking out target notes, we have some information as to what notes are going to be available to us. Now, before we jump in, I want to show you a thought process that I use when I'm thinking about soloing over a song. This song feels like the home bass is B minor, but that F sharp 7 actually is a chord that isn't in the key of B minor. So we're already sort of in a little bit of hot water. Another one I want to point out is that E major. Later on, we're using E minor. Most of the time when you hear a chord in a song, if it's major, it sort of stays major throughout the tune. And the same with a minor chord. Very rarely do you see a chord change its quality like this, major to minor. The reason I bring these two things up is there's a key change and there's a chord that's switching between major and minor. These could be trouble spots for us if we're just trying to solo over this song with a single scale. The nature of target notes, and specifically using chord tones, the notes in each one of these chords, is that we bypass all of that trouble because we're just using the notes from the chords, so we really just sort of can't go wrong, right? What I'm going to do next is put those chords onto the fretboard as triads. I'm going to use this D, G, and B string set. And I'm just going to put them sort of all in order and try to make them as close as possible. And that way I've got a little fabric, a little something that I can see the chord progression a little bit more clearly than I could with using these bigger chords. So I'm going to use this for the B minor. This is our F sharp major. I'm not going to worry about the 7th chord. I'm just going to make this major for now. Then we have an A triad here, and then E here. Here's our G, and here's a D chord. I'm going to use this for E minor, and then this one for the F sharp major. B minor, F sharp, A, E, G, D, E minor, F sharp. I'd probably run those a few times just to make sure I could see them, right? I've got good access to them. And now what I want to do is show you a little exercise that I really love to do. I'm going to take just the notes on the B string from each one of these chords, and I'm going to play it over the track, just that B string, right? And I'm going to be visualizing the chords as they go by. So I'm going to start this track right at the turnaround. That's the E minor. Here's the F sharp 7 on the B string. Just going down in half steps. That's the root of the A chord. That's the note on top of the E. That's the note on top of the G chord. That's the note on top of that D triad. Back up for the E minor, and then back down for the F sharp. Watch this, I'll play the chords. Right? That gives us a lot of information. I've got target notes all along this B string now that I can use to sort of outline the chords when I need to, right? I've got a map of what it looks like on that B string. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do it on the G string now. Same exact chords, same progression, but you'll see as we move along the G string that the relationships are slightly different, right? It doesn't move in the same way. We just noticed that B string just sort of moves down in half steps, right? There's a little tricky stuff when it goes back and forth here, but it's largely just half steps, just chromatic, right? One half step at a time. Watch what happens on the G string. There's that E minor, come around to the top. Here we go, on the G string, watch this. Stays the same for the F sharp. That's a common tone. Now down a whole step. That's the the A chord, and it stays here for the E. There's the note for the G chord. There's the note in the D chord. I'll play the chords along with it, watch. One more time, just that note, just that string. Right? It gives me a map of what to see and what's available to me on the G string as those chords are going by. One more time, we're going to do it for the D string. Now watch, this is going to be another separate set of intervals, right? It's going to be moving differently. I'll do that thing where I play the chord first and then I outline the note. So starting right before the turnaround here, here's our E minor chord, moving to F sharp, here comes the top. Here's my B minor triad. Just the notes by themselves. So these triads provide us a really great map to use to find target notes. Right? I can move between those, for example. Here, let me show you another thing. I'm just going to play the track again, and this time I'm going to play the triads. I'm just going to move across the triads and sort of switch strings as I go. It's going to make up a melody. I'm just seeing those triads and I'm just experimenting with pushing a note around and sort of using those chords to find my way through the forest, right? So to speak, I'm looking at those chord shapes and I'm using them as the rails for my melody. And I'm just using the notes in the chords, so I'm not going to ever play a wrong note, right? If I'm trying to solo over this with the B minor pentatonic scale, some of these notes are not going to sound great. Right? Not great. Right? I can get lucky, right? And if I really am careful, I can get by through that whole thing with the pentatonic scale. But these triads and these target notes allow me to at least start to plan out something that's melodic, that means something, that's actually tied to the chord progression. Well, there you have it. Apparently we made it through without a copyright strike, and hopefully we've learned something as well. Taking any chord progression that you're going to play a solo over and doing this kind of exercise yields fantastic results. Just putting those chords on the fretboard exposes the target notes for you, and all you have to do is use your visual acuity just to follow along. And when you're able to use these target notes, in other words, land on these chord tones, you really cannot fail because you're using the information that is inside the chord that you're playing over. Tabs for this lesson are available on my Patreon page. Head on over there if you want to grab them. I hope this lesson was interesting to you. I hope it was accessible for you, and I hope it got you interested in target notes. Above everything else, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.